No, sir.
All right, we have three public speakers for oral communication today, and so first up is, looks like Glenn Lerder. Leader?
Thank you. Yes, the primary concern I have this month is on the 302. I know there's a major construction project, several construction projects on Vista Way causing a detour, but it seems that the on-time average on the 302 has dropped precipitously, possibly below 50% now. The last 3 Wednesdays in a row, I have waited anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes for my bus to get home, to go home from Vista, beyond when the bus is scheduled to arrive.
I am sorry to hear about that, and we'll get Damon in touch with you and we can work through some of the issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Bullock.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I thought this presentation was going to start at 2, so I'm a little late here, but I did want to address you, and I just want to set the record straight about North County and what we're really about up here in North County, and because I think it's been misrepresented in the press quite a bit. This sentiment is out there in the city of Oceanside, and as a matter of fact, Chuck Lowry was acting mayor up here for about 9 months, and he signed on to a resolution which was all about that. And because induced traffic demand, we understand it up here in North County very well, as the people in downtown San Diego. We understand climate change up here. We understand, you were talking about 15 years. As a matter of fact, we have 10 years. Maybe it's 12. We have till 2030, however you want to do the math, till the end of 2030 for drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, or else we're going to be on a path to human extinction. We're not going to be able to get off that path. No one is saying how long it will take to happen. It will occur when large amounts of methane gas are erupt at the North Pole, and we start to have horrendous heat waves above 131 indexed heat. Now, you know that kills all the livestock and our crops and so on and so forth. And so we're up here. We had Chuck Lowry. It was our representative for many years. And you can say, hey, the voters, something happened. And now we have the Honorable Councilman Jack Feller, a climate denier, and one who wants to widen the freeways and so on and so forth. Well, let me tell you, we did that to ourselves. The progressive people did that to themselves. As a matter of fact, I mentioned Mike Levin. He won his election by 7 percentage points, and that was including Orange County. Here in Oceanside, it was probably a much larger amount. And he immediately endorsed the New Green Deal. He immediately endorsed proceedings forward with dealing with our president. People, that reflects the actual politics up here. You know, we flipped the city council in Carlsbad and so on and so forth. And so it's going to take some time to get things straightened out. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and I appreciate that. But I want to talk about, just if I have time, this is the California Democratic Party platform. And it started right here in Oceanside, by the way. Work to ensure that freeway expansion projects are subordinate to more sustainable alternatives. And here's another one. Demand a state plan showing how cars and light-duty trucks can hit climate stabilizing targets by defining enforceable measures to achieve necessary fleet efficiency and per capita driving limits. That's the official policy of, you may not agree with Democrats all the time, but you have to admit we've done pretty well electorally in the state. I don't know how I'm doing in my 3 minutes. I don't want to go over.
That's it. You've done it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you were looking at me. Okay, thanks a lot, Tony. Appreciate it.
Yep. Mr. Byrne.
I don't think it's on. I didn't see it, but that's okay. My name is Kevin Byrne, and once again, I live here in Oceanside. And one of the things I look at as an organization, North County Transit District, on how well it's run and managed. And but we need tools to work with, and the tools if you dig deep enough into Assembly Bill 805, have been given to this board to go to the taxpayers, come up with a plan for North County Transit District. And we can do that with rubber tire transit, and we can do it with rail. And I'm not speaking of underground rail. That's beyond the scope of, my mom used to say, there ain't enough tea in China. But so what I encourage you to do is to take the planning initiative for this transit district in your own hands and move forward with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and now with regard to the minutes for the regular board meeting of July 18th, do I have a motion to approve? We have a motion by Board Member Edson and a second by Board Member Jenkins, and we will now vote.
On the motion of Board Member Joel Edson, seconded by Board Member Sharon Jenkins to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held on July 18th, 2019. Motion passes with all board members present voting yes.
Very good. Moving on to consent items 1 through 7. Do any
Move approval.
move approval? There's a motion right there. Motion by Board Member Desmond and a second by Board Member Bhat Patel.
On the motion of Board Member Jim Desmond, seconded by Board Member Priya Bhat Patel to approve consent items 1 through 7. Motion passes with all board members present voting yes.
All right. We have one other business item, and we will now have a presentation by Jennifer Taylor, the Chief Procurement and Contract Administration Officer for item number 18.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Board of Directors. My name is Jennifer Taylor. I'm the Chief Procurement and Contract Administration Officer for North County Transit District. The item before you for consideration is the proposed ordinance number 6, which would bring an informal bidding procedure in accordance with the California Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, which I will refer to as the Act from this point forward. 1 year ago today, the governor approved Assembly Bill 3177 to authorize the district to opt into the Act. Agencies who do opt into the Act are authorized to use their own workforce for projects, public projects up to $60,000. Informal bidding procedures for projects up to $200,000 and formal projects for those that exceed $200,000. On February 21st, the board adopted resolution 19-01 to opt into the Act, and now is required to enact an informal bidding ordinance that governs the selection of contractors. The primary benefit of this Act is to increase the informal threshold from $10,000 to $200,000, thereby reducing the bid time for public projects from 4 weeks, a minimum of 4 weeks, to 1 to 2 weeks. If approved today, NCTD would be required to maintain a qualified contractors list and send notices to the contractors on that list inviting informal bids. We can also submit the notices to the construction trade journals that are listed in the Public Contract Code. And of course, the contracts would continue to be awarded in accordance with policy number 19. On July 18th, the board set the public hearing for today to consider the proposed ordinance number 6. And on July 22nd, the notice was published in the newspaper, actually 2 newspapers of general circulation, posted on the NCTD website, and made available at the administrative office, the customer service centers at Oceanside, Vista, and Escondido Transit Centers. And to date, no public comment has been received. So therefore, staff recommends that the board receive ordinance number 6, waive the full reading of the ordinance, receive public comment, close the hearing, and adopt ordinance number 6. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Anthony. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I'll move approval.
All right, on a motion by Board Member Desmond and a second by Vice Chair Feller, we will now vote.
On the motion of Board Member Jim Desmond, seconded by Board Vice Chair Jack Feller to approve agenda item number 8. Motion passes with all board members present voting yes.
Moving on to informational items. Item number 9, we will hear a monthly intergovernmental affairs report, and Mr. Matthew O. Tucker, Executive Director, is going to review that.
Okay. Is that the reaction? Ouch. I would say that I am going to reduce the time. We had a PowerPoint presentation that was associated with this. I don't plan to walk through the PowerPoint presentation. We actually presented that PowerPoint presentation. You want to hear it, Jim? We made a presentation. So the overall central premise of this item was related to SANDAG putting forth its 5-year funding plan in support of 12 major quarters, 5 big move projects. One of the projects that was of significance to NCTD is the 2 new train sets. This board has received briefings in the past regarding the needs for the 2 new train sets. I think of key importance for us is as we went into those discussions and SANDAG had its initial presentation, there was an alternative plan that would have defunded that. I think progress has been made in terms of the 2 new train sets being funded. I think as we went through this process, it highlighted, at least from an intergovernmental affairs approach for NCTD, us making sure that we do a better job of letting people know exactly the state of our project needs. Specifically as it relates to those 2 train sets, we've been talking to SANDAG prior to 2015 about the need to fund those 2 train sets. And one of the points I had previously highlighted with this board was, there would have never been the instance that you would build the Midcoast project and then try to figure out, as the construction is waning, how are you going to fund the vehicles? You would never do something like that. So it was a difficult position to be put in, but I think we were able to make the case exactly that the voters intended for the coaster improvements to be funded, and that it's of regional importance that we advance it. So that's about my comments on it. I'm looking forward to next week, hopefully a positive vote to advance those new train sets. We stand ready to move that forward through a procurement process.
Yes, we were quiet in August, but Mr. Tucker was very busy because SANDAG had this very important conversation that they put on the agenda for the 6th of September. And it was related to a request that we had made as a board to fund the 2 train sets. So it was important for Matt to get very busy with getting people up to speed on throughout the region on why we needed those train sets. I think that the discussion at the board was about as vigorous as I've ever heard, and I think that out of that came a fine presentation by Matt and many more board members at SANDAG that are understand the needs of the coaster. I know many of us were at that meeting, or actually I wasn't at the meeting. I was in Idaho Falls, but I was listening on my headset. But Board Member Edson, or was it Board Member Jenkins?
I just wanted to comment that I also listened to the meeting and I thought you did an excellent job, very compelling, explaining to the board why it was important that we close this last loop with the train sets. Thank you.
Board Member Desmond?
And Matt, wasn't the coaster on the original Transnet ballot language?
Yes, sir. It was
Thank you.
on that original ballot language.
And I think a lot of people were unaware of that. So we actually, you brought it up as the conversations were taking place over the last year. You handed out at one of the board meetings the actual Transnet language, and I had that in my folder. And so Matt and I were talking about, pointing to that. Yes, yes, yes. It was an interesting meeting because it was an informational item. There was no vote taken. So I think a lot of feedback was given to Mr. Crowder, and there will be a vote taken a week from this Friday. So there, I think, will be some revisions made to the original proposal for how to spend the money that is currently available, which all of us know is not enough to really do everything that we need to do. But I think it is likely to have the full funding of the two train sets to create 30-minute headways during peak hours, morning and evening, and 1 hour headways for the coaster off peak. So looking forward to that. And because I was in Idaho Falls, Priya sat in as the alternate. I appreciated that. And so welcome to SANDAG. It was quite a meeting to be your first. All right. Moving on to item number 10. We're going to receive an update on the Oceanside Transit Center, and Tracy Foster is going to make that presentation. Looks like she's going to have some help.
Thank you, Chairman Kranz, and good afternoon, board members. I am joined this afternoon by CBRE, which is our on-call real estate consultant, Brian Hutchinson and Michael McShay. Brian is a regional manager and Michael is the executive vice president at CBRE for their government and public sector work. So they'll be helping me along as we move forward. So we've talked about Oceanside Transit Center before in the development of it, but just as a way of refresher, the Transit Center is a multimodal facility. It provides over 4,000 trips for over 4,000 passengers a day. That includes trips on all of our modes, as well as Amtrak, Metrolink, Riverside Transit, Flixbus. So there's a lot of activity going on at the Oceanside Transit Center. It's a 12.9 acre site. 10.2 acres is what is developable. The areas that aren't included in there includes the parking structure that is just adjacent to the bus island. That property is owned by the city of Oceanside, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the active track area and platforms. And we're talking about this today and moving this forward as it is an area of focus, a strategic area of focus for the district to ensure a long-term revenue stream. So in May of this year, we tasked CBRE with their first task, and it included 4 specific items. The first being research for grant funding opportunities that can help us move the development along in the event that NCTD or there was a shortfall in funding and NCTD needed to come to the table. So we have that. Also to support the developers workshop, to update the 2018 highest and best use analysis that was performed by our prior on-call consultant. And then lastly, to prepare the actual RFP document. The status of all of these items, the grant funding technical memorandum was provided to us in July. We're still working through the details on that and refining some of the information so that it can be very useful for NCTD. The developers workshop was conducted on August 21st, and the request for proposal draft is in progress, and it will be delivered on October 21st, if not sooner. Just also the highest and best use analysis has been updated as well. We received the first draft just this past Friday. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the developers workshop and everything that we went through. In preparation for that workshop, we had multiple meetings with the city of Oceanside. Currently, our site is zoned as transportation. So we were reviewing with the city various zoning and possible changes for the future. We reviewed the city's vision and goals. And also we reviewed the city and NCTD's shared parking structure that I had previously just mentioned. and the opportunity to perhaps include that within the development when we put out the RFP. We also, CBRE, with the help of Gridix, their subconsultant, performed massing studies so that we could see the potential and convey that to the developers. We, of course, created our invitations and our development list, which was sourced through CBRE's database, as well as our solicitation portal, Planet Bids. We sent out 168 development companies' invitations. We received 27 RSVPs, and we had 9 developers in attendance on the 21st. So now to talk a little bit about what we reviewed in the workshop. We went through an overview, obviously, of NCTD and what we do and what our development goals are. And those goals included, again, our long-term revenue source for the district, incorporating the SANDAG regional mobility hub concepts, and we heard about that a little bit earlier today. We want to, of course, be compliant with NCTD board policy number 33, specifically relating to that the development would prioritize transit, is fiscally responsible, and is successful in the community and integrates the community. We also talked about incorporating NCTD operation improvements. So that includes the replacement of our parking. We have 556 surface parking out there today, and the RFP will have that requirement in it for the replacement of that. Also replacing our customer service and ticketing. That includes not only ours, but ticketing and customer service for Amtrak, as well as Greyhound, who exists there today. Our bus island relocation, as I mentioned, it is adjacent to the parking structure right now and very far away from our other modes. So trying to bring that bus island closer to the connection for Sprinter and Coaster. And then lastly, the potential relocation of this office to be located over at the transit center and within the development. We talked about our development vision. And this incorporated some of the feedback that we received from the city, which included a desire to have housing, of course, hospitality and meeting and event space, and a development that complements the community's vision and objectives. And I am going to turn it over to Brian right now, who's just going to walk you through some of the massing studies and the overview and concepts.
Good afternoon, Chairman, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. On behalf of CBRE and my partner, Mike McShay, we're excited to be here and part of this aspirational project to assist with NCT's goals and objectives. So as Tracy discussed, significant coordination, communication with the city of Oceanside to make sure that some of our conceptual ideas weren't kind of going to be shocking when they were unveiled at the developers workshop. So we had 10.2 acres to work with. Once we removed the streets and the setbacks, we figured we probably had about 6.8 developable acres to work with. So we just really kind of started this concept with just a very macro perspective of saying, okay, what do we have to work with currently on the ground? How are the parcels laid out? How are they configured? And really what can we do that is really a moderate approach to what the site could potentially yield. So as Tracy said, 10.2 acres, but we only worked on 6.8 acres. So as stated earlier, it's not currently zoned for any type of vertical development. So working with our subcontractor Gridix, we made some inferences, also working with the city as well. We made some assumptions that we would just kind of transition some of the current vertical development that's going on across the street and here in Oceanside. We kind of transitioned some of those zoning variances right onto the site, and what could that potentially yield? So we did make some assumptions, some variances that we kind of anticipate that could potentially be approved by the city. And this concept right here, it includes the actual parking structure in the northwest corner, where we've actually built, we've incorporated that into the development. So on this conceptual idea itself, it can yield somewhere around 1 million square feet of new development, of mixed use development here in the community. And that potentially puts in 348 additional residential units that can be a combination of affordable housing and market rate housing as well. This is just a kind of another, one of the things that was discussed as well was that Cleveland Street needed to be connected as a thoroughfare, but it doesn't need to be a high-speed thoroughfare throughout the community where you know, it's causing trafficability issues. So we did in the design, we put a calming effect in there so that you can come off of Cleveland and you're not going to be able to go, you know, connect all the way, you know, north to south or south to north. It's not going to be a high-speed thoroughfare through the community. And this is just another depiction of how we've kind of connected it and how it kind of in our opinion it enhances the community because it's currently right now as everyone knows you can't transit Cleveland through the town. So this is without conceptually this is without the parking structure. So this is kind of as is. This is about 653,000 square feet. We kind of did some market analysis to determine what kind of product we could yield in there. So it's a mix of retail, convention space, like we discussed with the city, some multifamily, and some housing component built in as well as a retail component. So this is not set in stone. These are conceptual ideas, and I think that's kind of our biggest message is that. Conceptual, but we believe that it will give the development community a good head start. Once the RFP is issued, they'll have an understanding of what will be palpable here within the community and potentially make their submission a little bit easier for the RFP. And I believe that's my last slide. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today.
Continuing on though, we also had a representative from Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities to do an overview on the grant funding available. We don't believe that we're going to make the next cycle, but there's $550 million out there, $30 million available per project as a maximum request. So we wanted to convey that those opportunities are out there, and we will be encouraging the developers to pursue those as well. We also went through the market dynamics currently in Oceanside and all the great things happening. We went through NCTD's RFP process and what we foresee the process will look like. The city review process, the city was kind enough to join us and did a presentation on what their review process is and the steps involved in that as well. And then lastly, we ended with a property tour of the site. And after the workshop, we sent out a survey monkey to get some additional feedback from the developers who were in attendance, wanting to find out, is it a realistic size and scope, the largest obstacles, what's attractive about the development, information that would be helpful to them. All of this so that we can do a great job in getting that information out with our RFP. We sent out 27 surveys. We would send them out to all of that had RSVP'd positively. Only 5 were received, but nevertheless, some of the highlights from that the development is definitely realistic in size and scope. The biggest obstacles that the developers see is issues with coastal commissions, entitlements of the process, cost of the new public improvements, and then timing of the RFP. They're really looking for us to move this along quickly. Oops. And so our next step, as I mentioned, we just received the highest and best use analysis last week. We'll be going through that and we'll be finalizing the RFP so that we get that draft on October 21st. We'll be working with the city on that draft as well. And have a finalized document ready to go on December 13th for posting on Planet Bids by the end of this year. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, actually, I'm going to have a kind of a follow-on to the presentation and hear from the City of Oceanside through Vice Chair Feller.
I attended part of the workshop, I thought that we had plenty of staff there. But I would, the RENA numbers are something we're all concerned about, and this is a good thing for us. It's what we're shooting for. These may be moderate above middle income type housing, but if we are able to work the affordable side of it into it, that's going to be very beneficial for us. You know, I welcome the opportunity to have a convention type facility. That is something desperately needed that almost everybody will use. Do you think it'll be done in 5 years?
We know that we have to go through the rezoning process for that. We certainly want to move things as quickly as possible in the development community. That's all of the feedback that we have. So
I'll help you with that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Board Member Edson.
Thank you. Tracy, I think you mentioned that currently there are 556 transit parking spaces there currently. How many are required of the new project?
The same.
The same.
There were other goals established that had parking requirements much higher, but we're going to maintain the constant of the 556.
So slides 10 that we received in the slides that we got the PowerPoints said 658 spaces. Are the 556 included in the 658, or the 658 part of the project itself?
That's part of the project. Oh, the 556 is part of that.
Is included in the 658. And is there contingency for any growth or future parking needs if they might exist?
There is, I think,
Well, let me talk about it from a policy point of view.
Sure.
So there's, let's separate the transit usage from the development usage. Whatever the developer is required to have in terms of parking, that's what's going to have to be done. In terms of from the transit policy perspective, no, we have no intention of growing parking as part of this project. It's one of the things that if we're really serious about some of the goals and some of the service plans that we're advancing, we will not be significantly investing in growing parking beyond the needs today. Our primary focus is going to be on managing parking. And that's going to be beginning sometime next year, that we're going to be implementing managed parking at all of our facilities so that we can minimize the usage to only transit supportive purposes.
Okay, and the parking right now, that's at surface level, is that correct?
Yes.
It is.
Okay, and would this future parking incorporate using a parking garage structure?
Currently, it's wrapped into the design of the building.
Okay, so it would be structured parking.
Structured parking.
And who would be paying for those parking spaces? Was this something that NCTD would be paying for?
That's something that we would be putting out as a replacement, that the developer would replace our parking as part of their development and their costs.
Okay, and the 6.8 developable acres, does that include the Oceanside parking structure?
It does not.
It doesn't.
Okay. And so slide 13, sorry, was about the survey. And so 27 surveys were sent out, but only 5 were received back. So that's 18.5%, which doesn't seem very high to only get 5% back.
But it is more than 50% of those who attended, and there could have been people not comfortable with responding since they didn't actually attend. And what we saw, that really was the case. Sure.
Of the 5 that did respond, 4 said they indicated they were going to be bidding on the proposal. So that was, I think that was very positive from the survey.
Okay, and then there was financing discussed. I think you talked about grant funding and whatnot. Are you contemplating NCTD participating in the financing?
As far as from a grant perspective, we would support that.
So one of the things that we wanted to do, and Tracy talked about the affordable, what's it, affordable communities grant,
Affordable housing,
housing grant.
sustainable communities.
So with this approach, the approach that we're taking is we're expecting the proposers to figure out where they're going to get grants and bring it as part of any offsets that they have. So we don't view ourselves being in the middle. We expect them to produce a proposal that's right side up, generating revenue, and that they are at the risk of developing a project that will receive the grants that they need to make the project positive and acceptable to NCTD.
So will all of this be very clear in the RFP to the developers so they know what they're actually looking at? Because I think the more upfront we are, the more likely that we'll be successful in producing a viable project.
Agreed. It's imperative that we do that.
Yes. All right. So parking spaces, my recollection, above ground cost about $25,000 a piece, below ground about $50,000 a piece. So developer would be needing to factor that in, correct?
Mm.
And one last question. That 6.8 acres, once you add the city's parking structure, what does that turn into developable?
I don't have that parcel offhand right now. I can't remember the actual dimension of it. But we can get back to you.
Okay, and affordable, will that be included in the RFP?
That's going to vary. We probably anticipate somewhere between 10 and 20% affordable. One of the things that Mr. Tucker referred to as well is parking is kind of changing as a society, and this is going to be a TOD development, so we do believe that there will be bonus reductions for the parking requirement, somewhere potentially from 15 to 25% reduction for parking requirement. So we just don't know where we're at on that yet.
Yeah, and I hope that your RFP also asks questions about the experience that the developers have with transit-oriented development, because it is a special animal, and there is transit-oriented development and there's transit-adjacent development, and there's a big difference, and we want the oriented. And so I hope that is something that we inquire about through the RFP. So thank you. Board Member Jenkins?
I just wanted to say, Julie, you can get one of these down in your city too. Right around your
Thank you.
transit center.
We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to your point about experience, I lead the public sector practice for CBRE nationally. We have, at any given point in time, maybe 15 public-private partnerships going on around the country, from Miami to New York to Austin and everywhere in between. So we're very, very comfortable that the RFP will be structured in a way that you all will be comfortable with, and we will address all of the issues that you might be concerned with as far as TOD.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And
one follow-up quick.
Really quick, just that board member or board chair Kranz and I were in Vancouver last week for Revolution, and we were in the same room attending many TOD panels. So we have.
Yeah, that's a conference that really does get into TOD and land use issues pretty heavily. And Mr. Tucker was bored to tears, but he likes to go to the one where they do the rodeo with the buses and stuff. But anyhow, Board Member Jenkins.
I have two questions. You mentioned on one page maximum of 348 units. On page 10, it shows 213 units. Am I misreading page 10 at all?
No, that's the those are the density units that we could potentially yield. So can I see that?
Am I missing something?
And that's the difference between the two different development concepts. So one was without the parking structure,
Okay.
and one is with. So that's the delta there.
And 1 million square feet versus 600.
And 1 million square feet versus 653,000 square feet.
Okay. And then my other question or comment is probably some of our communities are experiencing some difficulties with mixed use. And so would this mixed use be flexible so that if commercial doesn't work here, I mean, we think it's going to work, but it doesn't work in some of our cities. So would it be flexible enough that if commercial wasn't working, it could move back to residential or over to residential?
I think that it would have the flexibility. We would have to see what the developers come back, but we would also be working closely with the city on what their requirements are and how that would actually work. They would really be the lead on that component.
Okay. And so hopefully we're talking more, when you say affordable, do you mean true affordable or do you mean less expensive? This is a difference for us.
Affordable.
True affordable housing. Okay.
In terms of AMI, what will that look like? Will it be like 30%? Like, what are we looking at? Yeah. Because that's like
from a policy point of view, what I've said to staff as we go out to do these types of projects, we are going to make sure we incorporate affordable housing, and I mean real affordable housing, as a component of each of the projects. We haven't gotten down to what is the level of the detail of it, but we have it as a requirement that it will include it.
Board Member Desmond.
Thank you. I'm very concerned about the parking. As a coaster rider, I talked to other passengers, and the biggest complaint I've heard is there's not enough parking at Poinsettia Station and Carlsbad Station. And I, as a transit rider, if I come up and I pull into the park, and if I don't have a parking space, I'm driving to San Diego. I'm not gonna use transit. If hopefully you get your trains, and you're running more trains and more frequencies. I realize you're trying to the single occupancy vehicle is evil these days, but that's how people are going to get to riding transit. So I just be very careful and sensitive to provide the parking so that people can use the transit.
No, and I agree that we need to have the parking spaces there. But as we sit today, and Oceanside is actually a perfect example. Our parking requirement generally is 24-hour parking. And in that parking lot, you probably have a significant greater than 50% of the cars that don't move out of that parking lot at all for more than 1 or 2 days. And so that's our goal of moving forward, implementing managed parking, because these are not transit users that are consuming a lot of the parking space. And I think we're going to see before this procurement is actually even, well down the road of award, the impact of us getting the contracts in place and putting up the signage and implementing managed parking, how many spaces are available. Poinsettia is an example. My house is on the other side of that station. And what has happened is that folks who live in those residences are now using that parking space, but that will quickly turn around once we notice and start enforcing with citations that you can't.
Okay, and I think I had Board Member Gaslin next, and then.
So I have several questions. One is, I didn't see drop-off zones in this, the clear places where people can pull in and drop off. That's going to be important, not just for families dropping off somebody who's going to get on the train, but for Uber and Lyft and other shared riding.
Yeah, the transit prioritization is key. We did indicate including the mobility hub concepts that SANDAG has out there, which does include those types of services and amenities for the site as well. So
what you saw was extremely super duper high level.
Yeah.
For illustrative purposes. We already are actually working through, because if you go to that site now, you will see that we have a bus island on one side. And then you have the rail services on the other side. We are already advancing a project, NCTD is, to consolidate so that we can give people more direct bus to rail transfers. But within the process of a proposal developing, as Tracy said, one of the key pieces is they're going to have to come up with a transit supportive a plan that supports what we're already doing and our need to have transit operations.
Okay, good. So I'll look forward to that. And so the 332 hotel rooms that are in this, so on average 300 square feet per hotel room, is the rationale for that because of the convention center? Is there needed extra hotel capacity, or could that become residential?
So we we plan that with the convention space, but we also, as we've gone through this, we also recognize the fact that there's a considerable amount of hotels being developed here in Oceanside. So the market may potentially not be able to absorb that. So to your point, ma'am, it would directly potentially translate into additional residential, and that would be actually more palatable for the developers as well.
Okay, two more questions. So the next question is about the 26 townhouses that are 2,000 square foot each. That's a lot of square footage to give to the townhouses versus the apartments that are 900. So what is the rationale for townhouses as opposed to the sort of units that we find, for example, in downtown Encinitas, in and around the railroad area?
Right. Again, conceptual. We kind of looked at the deal structure, potential deal structure, as long-term ground lease and potentially a fee simple sale. So having it structured that way might be a little bit more of a hook for the development community, because they can build those potential townhomes and then they can get a quicker return on their investment, which makes it more attractive to them to potentially propose.
Okay. And then last question. So for all these residential units or hotels that may go residential, or maybe they'll stay hotel, is the parking that you've sketched out, the 658 spaces, or will there also be parking within the apartment building units and other?
Go ahead.
Just to say that the parking requirements, whatever the use is going to be and whatever is proposed, will have to be in line with whatever the city's requirements are.
Okay.
Board Member McNamara.
Priya touched on this, but I think it's worth bringing back up. And that is when the term affordable housing, I mean, that's a term of art, and it's a percentage of AMI, and there's very low housing, right? Low housing. And so, you know, when people often say affordable, when what they're really talking about, this is a term I like, is workforce housing, right? Or middle income housing, something like that. But affordable is a term of art. So when Priya asked that, I think that's important for people to know which category of affordable housing are you putting in there, right?
So let me give you, because I can't get into the percentage, but I deem the affordable housing piece is if one of our bus operators should be able to afford to live in that house. Okay, and so our bus operators have been here for 25, 30 years, probably is approximating about $55 to $60,000 a year. That's my definition, because a lot of what we're faced with it. I mean, and I'm looking at it a little bit. I wish I could actually build housing for the people who are going to work directly for NCTD. Is having a workforce that has to live, maybe in Riverside County and drive in to begin work, and so I do have in mind exactly what I mean by affordable. It's fitting directly to the demographic of people who drive our buses.
I'll just comment. In housing and affordable housing is a problem all across the United States right now, and many of your peer groups are imposing those restrictions or those requirements on all of the development community, and there's still a way for them to be, the development community, to be very successful, to be able to offer affordable housing and to show whatever returns they need to show to their investors. So, as CBRE, we're very confident that we'll be able to achieve your affordability goals and get a really good quality development at the same time.
Yeah,
I have to pop in, Matt, and say I really like that vision of the idea of the people who are actually working as part of the transit system can be part of these transit hubs and live there.
Yes, and actually AMI is defined regionally, and I believe that salary range is in line with a family that it would be qualified as low income. I think it's about 45,000 for a single person is considered low income. So Encinitas, I serve on Encinitas City Council, and we've been in the throes of all sorts of troubles with our housing element. So I know more about this subject than I care to. One of the things that is discussed frequently is this concept of affordable by design. And that's, there's the deed restricted affordable, which is what we say we want 20% deed restricted affordable, or 15, whatever the inclusionary housing ordinance requires here in Oceanside. But the other alternative is to make the unit small enough that they naturally have an affordability component to it. And I think that for me, that's the best use of our development resources, is to try and build product that will forever maintain its affordability. Developers are looking for the big units to make the big bucks, because market rate around here is pretty lucrative business. So but when it comes to this affordable concept, I think that the focus on affordable by design is good, and that's kind of a buzz term. So it's something that we might want to, for policy purposes, to try and define. Who had other questions? Let's go with Board Member Franklin.
I just couldn't help myself but point out that the number that you quoted was about 97% of the AMI for Oceanside. So I know that we'll all be proud to know that our drivers won't qualify for anything much less than almost 100% of AMI. So when we get into the numbers, we'll have to think about that. So,
all right, thanks. Board Member Edson.
Yes, thank you. So my city, also in North County, is the other Amtrak location for on the Los Angeles corridor in the San Diego subdivision in North County. And we have a lot of people who park for Amtrak, and they aren't people who necessarily walk, because we are sort of the regional locations, both Oceanside and Solana Beach. The majority of the people that ride the Amtrak from Solana Beach drive there. So there's parking for them. Coaster is, and Amtrak's also proposing a 13th round trip that will begin this calendar year. Mm-hmm. And the Coaster is proposing near future doubling the number of trains. What's the percentage of Coaster riders for Oceanside that actually live within walking distance of the train, and that you expect to be taking the Coaster or taking the Sprinter?
Oh, I don't know that, but I do know one of the bigger goals for the district is rolling out more of our flexible fleets to connect people directly to it, similar to what we did in Carlsbad, and what we're going to actually look to expand in Carlsbad in the next couple of months. That's kind of our vision, is that we don't want all of the single occupant vehicles having to come to the site, and to the degree that we can manage parking and then get people there in a really efficient way, and then get them directly back to where they want to go. That's where we view the future going.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And I didn't ask Anthony, do we have any public speakers on this?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you to the three of you for the great presentation. Item number 11, we're going to receive an update on the FY 2019 marketing activities and preliminary revenue results from Karen Tukulski, our Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. So Kimmy Wall is going to be joining me for our presentation. We've had a very exciting year during fiscal 19 in our marketing department, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our results and some of the good positive things that happened with you today. So marketing is all about presentation, and to aid our visual presentation, Kimmy and I brought some props with us today. So we hope that as we go through our presentation, you appreciate our enthusiasm and enjoy the show. And of course, please ask us questions. Nothing scary, don't worry. Won't embarrass the district. So marketing team has three primary goals. We want to increase ridership, we want to increase revenue, and of course, we want to improve the customer experience. So there's lots of different things that we do every day to help achieve those goals. We're going to talk through some of the main ones today. The first thing we want to talk about is advertising sales revenue. So this is all about direct revenue to NCTD. So the direct revenue to NCTD comes in through our transit vehicle advertising program that's managed through a contract with Clear Channel Communications. So if everybody who's familiar with the ads and the wraps on the buses and the trains, that's what that program is for, and that's what that money comes into the district for. So it's a very important component of our revenue. The contract with Clear Channel has been in place since fiscal 17. They were contracted prior, but we bid out, and this was their new contract, and they've been very, very successful. And we're super excited about it. So under our agreement with Clear Channel, NCTD gets 63% of the gross sales revenue. We also have a minimum annual guarantee, or a MAG, that they're required to pay us every year regardless of sales. So exciting for us is that every year Clear Channel has not only outperformed their MAG, but they've been growing in their performance year over year. So in fiscal 19, as you can see, NCTD received over $1.6 million in revenue. That was 19% over what we got the prior year before, and a full 42% over our MAG. So this is just a visual representation of our MAG compared to our revenue under the current contract. So again, as you can see, the MAG increases year over year. It goes up 5% year over year under the contract, and our revenue has been steadily increasing in higher and higher amounts. So this is a really important program. We are going to continue to leverage any opportunity that we can to keep the revenue growth growing and coming into NCTD. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Kimmy, and she's going to talk about some of our services advertising.
All right. Okay, so we do have services advertising, and our goals are to promote public awareness of our services, support ridership, and revenue growth. We have a contract with Brown Marketing. We've had that since December 2015, and they are a local company specializing in marketing campaigns, advertising, and community relations. They help us with negotiating ad buys, monitoring our assets, and creating the annual media plan. And with their relationships with other clients in the media, they're able to secure more favorable rates and packages for us. We've had an advertising budget this past year and in the previous years of about $130,000. So some of the areas that we do service advertising in would be these that you see, TV, radio. For the television ones, this past October, we filmed 4 new commercials, one that was a 30-second with all of our modes, and then 3 that were individual 15 seconds for each one of our modes, so we could target specific areas depending where we were advertising. You can see that we did a lot of local channels, a lot of morning news, and then radio specifically to students and tourism. And commuters for English and non-English speaking radio. A few other places that we do service advertising, the digital and social media, which is where we would again use our commercials as well as static ads. And then outdoor, we had a billboard on the 78 West targeting commuters. And for print, it's very driven towards tourism. And so that was with our chamber ads and then with a bunch of different tourism guides. Here you can see a few of our specific advertisements that we had up on the left for the passport and the free ride day. Those are very targeted ads to business commuters and then to specifically that event that was on free ride day. And then the other ones, sometimes we do all modes. And so it might be an area such as the chamber or tourism where it's just explaining all the different types of transit you can take. And I'll send it back over to Karen.
Right. Thank you, Kimmy. So promotions and events are very important to us and in NCTD. There's always something going on around here, tons of different things to do. And so NCTD's opportunity to partner with some of these event sponsors and encourage people to take transit to these various events is a great way for us to maintain and increase our ridership. So as you can see, we supported several promotions and events over the prior fiscal year, and the support can range based on, how big the event is. It could be something as simple as, social media for maybe some of the smaller events, website promotions where both us and the event are co-promoting. San Diego Restaurant Week is an example, or all the way up to extra maybe rail or bus service like we have for the fair, for Comic-Con, or for the other really, really large events. And then one new event last year, a regional event that Kimmy mentioned as well, was the Free Ride Day. So that was October 2nd last year with us and MTS, very successful. And we are again having it on October 2nd this year, right around the corner. So we do hope that you and all your cities will join us in, promoting that event, encouraging people to try transit. So what I want to do now is walk through some of the biggest promotions and events that we had during fiscal 19. So I'm going to go chronological, so starting in July of 18 and going through June of 19. And the first one that we want to talk about is our partnership with the Del Mar Races. So the first thing everybody thinks of when they think of Del Mar Races is opening day. And the first thing everybody thinks of when they think of opening day is hats. So Kimmy and I brought our fancy hats to wear while we talk with you about our Pony Express event. So Pony Express is a special ticket promotion that we share with the Del Mar races, which runs from July through November. So the ticket includes both the transit component as well as the entry into the races. And the price has been pretty consistent the last few years. It's $11, and that again is both the transit and the entry. And last year we sold 1,000 Pony Express tickets. Specific to just the opening day itself, which is always the biggest day of racing season, you can see that we had just over 6,700 riders on our coaster, which was a little lower than the prior year. You also see that opening day attendance was down a little over the prior year. So in terms of our preliminary results for this year from July of 19 on opening day, and just opening day, we don't have any Pony Express data yet. We actually were pleased that we saw an increase in our ridership. So we went up to just over 6,900, despite the fact that the races themselves actually had a little bit lower attendance. So again, this is an important promotion. You know, races have kind of gone up and down, I think, over the past couple of years in terms of attendance and popularity with people. So something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on and continue to make sure that we do the best we can to support it and bring the ridership into NCTD through this event. So the next big event, Holiday Express. So everybody loves the holiday, and the Holiday Express is a super fun family event. We hold it every year in December. For the past several years, we've done just one weekend, and we've kind of grown it. We started out with 3 trains on a Saturday, and then we bumped it up. And last year, we were all the way up to 6 trains over the 2 days. We have a contract vendor that comes in and provides characters. They have carolers. The trains are all decorated, super, super popular. We actually sold out in 20 minutes last year. So our tickets went on sale online at 9 a.m. and by 9:20 they were gone. So we did way better than Comic-Con and everybody else. We sold out super fast. So for this year, we're actually going to double it. We're going to go to 2 full weekends. We're going to have 12 trains. We hope we sell out twice as fast. Tickets are going on sale in November, November 7th. So if you're interested, your family and friends, anyone you know are interested, tell them to get online because tickets are hot. You'll also see that we were also bringing in some revenue from this. In the past, this hasn't been a revenue generator, but we've worked really hard, and Kimmy and her team have really worked hard to, you know, increase just the value of the event and the presentation, and people are really, really excited about it. So by growing it and doubling it this year, we'll be looking to continue to increase that revenue that we bring into the district through this event. And then the last one, 14. Yeah, 14. And that's a round trip. It's a special round trip. We're 1 hour from Oceanside to Solana Beach and back. So that's the events, the carolers, the characters, everybody is all on the train. And then we have some things at the station as well. So the last promotion that we want to talk about is our Fair Tripper. And this is specific to the fair that we just had back in June. So there's a couple different ticket packages that we have. The big one for us is what I call the North County only ticket package. So that includes your transit on any NCTD service and your entry into the fair. And we have different adult and senior and youth packages. We also have a regional ticket that we partner with MTS on, but there aren't a whole lot of folks who are taking 2 different modes of transit to come up from the south up here. So the North County one is really the big one for us. As you can see, we were up 14% in our sales overall over the prior year. And then also our Special Breeze 408 route, we had double-digit increases in ridership, 11% over 2018 there as well. And both of those increases, despite the fact that the fairs you see did actually have a slight downturn in attendance from 2018. So again, these are just probably the biggest and the most well-known of our promotions and events. We have a lot more that we do, and we're always looking to do more and to continue to leverage these. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kimmy, and she is going to walk you through the rest of our information.
Okay, So in addition to the promotions and events, we also do outreach and education. That would include safety and transit awareness. So we have Rail Safety Month, which is actually going on again right now. It's every September, where we go out to the rail stations every week and then have the sheriffs visit the different bars and restaurants along the coastal line just to inform the patrons and the owners. Also reading to kids. You can see that middle picture. I was out at a library. We read to the kids and then talk about safety around the rails. And then service outreach events like Stuff the Bus, which is a group effort with the Girl Scouts of America and the San Diego Food Bank and MTS to stuff all the buses with food around the holiday times. Fare change outreach, brand awareness, any kind of thing that we can get information out to the public. And then we also have collateral correspondence. That would include all of our written correspondence, such as press releases that go out to the media for things such as PTC certification or holiday schedules. We have newsletters for each of our modes. So Coaster, Springer Breeze, and Lyft Paratransit have their own newsletters, as well as the one NCTD, which is the internal one for staff and contractors and key stakeholders such as yourselves. And then we have the miscellaneous collateral, which would include kind of everything else, the brochures, the writer's guides a couple times a year, the website, and all those fun activities. So as you can see, marketing wears many different hats from advertising to events to collateral. And we had a great FY19 with a lot of different activities, and we look forward to an even more prosperous FY20. So we're happy to take questions, but before that, we have the commercial, which was the 30-second commercial we filmed in October, and that covers all of the modes that we're going to show for you. So take it away, Anthony.
At NCTD, our transit service lines are designed to do one thing: move people. So sit back, relax, and let us do the driving.
Excellent, thank you, and I do appreciate the spice that you provided to the presentation, especially this late in the meeting. So,
Thank you.
Does Matt get his pink hat back?
yeah,
No, I'm keeping that one for myself.
you look like Mayor Voss up there for a minute. Yes. Any questions from the board? Board Member Castleman.
So a suggestion, actually. The university students that I'm involved with, and also the Cal State San Marcos students, are keen riders and users of all the transit. University parking is becoming more and more scarce on purpose to try to drive people to transit. And I would encourage reaching out to the younger generations in a decided way, so that as they're growing up in our region, they'll just be in the habit of using the public transportation.
Yeah, absolutely. We do currently have some ticket partnerships with some of the different schools, and that is definitely an area where we need to continue to promote and take advantage of that, because they are especially open to it as well.
Okay, any others? Anthony, any public speakers on this item?
No, sir.
All right, so that wraps up the main portion of the agenda. We're moving on to the Executive Director's Report.
Okay,
Mr. Tucker.
I'm going to be brief. Just a couple of things. Carl Moyer grant for the 2 replacement locomotives. We just submitted our application today, so over the next few weeks, we should hear something back about that. That would allow us, if we receive the funding, to have replaced the entire fleet of locomotives with brand new Tier 4 locomotives. And if we received the grant, timely execution, those locomotives should be in place within 24 months. I do want to mention that during the summer break, we did meet with our Cal State San Marcos and with the city of San Marcos, and we are advancing a survey with the university, a transportation survey in support of potential implementation of a similar type of flexible shuttle as we have in Carlsbad within the city of San Marcos. For sure, NCTD is going to advance the first project, which would be a replacement of a fixed route bus route. but based upon our discussions with the university, we're likely to be able to combine those services together to be able to produce something that really meets the needs of the university students. So we are actively working those markets. The last thing that I will just make a note, because at some points you maybe will hear about this, we have a partnership with BNSF. We've agreed to co-fund a study that's going to be incorporated into the larger LoSAN study. The intent of the study is to increase capacity for freight and for passenger operations. But the primary benefit for NCTD in these discussions is there are opportunities for us to be able to receive grant funding to support double tracking improvement and core capacity improvements. The big deal for BNSF and the port is the port has a plan to significantly increase the amount of freight movement out of the port of San Diego. And so the deal here is that we would be supporting core expansion at the port, which includes the implementation or the construction of the convention center project, and also looking at pushing trains to National City, and that would be both freight, coaster, and Amtrak. So we have entered into an agreement with the consultant, funded 50-50 between us to support that. If that were to occur, the project to get funded, it would result in likely between 2 to 6 additional freight trains per day being operated, and those trains likely would be operated during the daytime. So a significant activity would be very beneficial for us if we're able to come together on a project that works, because it would compete very well in goods movement funding as well as state funding for cap and trade. So that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. AB 1234, I would report that I attended the Revolution Conference in Vancouver, as Jewel mentioned. I found it again to be quite stimulating with the conversation. Largely for me, I focus on TOD and land use issues because we have a transit center in downtown Encinitas, so I am pretty interested in hearing what others are doing. Always a lot of conversation around parking issues as well. So very familiar, and it sounded quite a bit like our conversation here this afternoon. So other board member comments or correspondence or reports?
So I attended the LoSAN board meeting, or took part in the LoSAN board meeting on Monday, and LoSAN board of directors unanimously approved our NCTD's request to authorize additional scope to corridor optimization efforts to analyze necessary infrastructure investments required to increase sprinter frequency to 15 minutes. So that was really a great cost savings for NCTD, and we're grateful to LoSAN for doing that.
Okay. Any other comments? Doesn't look like it. So any remaining public speakers?
No, sir.
And so that brings us to the next scheduled meetings are executive committee's meeting on October 3rd, time to be determined. MSPBD is October 17th, time to be determined. Regular board meeting is October 17th at 2 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you.